Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the supportive viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald on Quinsippy Island in Quincy at the Lincoln-era log cabin village. The Friends of the Log Cabins have been down here for years and years putting this village together, and they continue to find new ways to improve it. We're looking at the, help me out here, John, what's the name of this cabin? The Fraser Cabin?
1828 Fraser Cabin.
1828 Fraser Cabin. What's noteworthy about this is this week there's been a class here, and people who are interested in log cabins and reconstructing them have been down here taking classes on chinking and daubing. And we're going to find out what those words mean and what these people have learned this week. John, this has been an ongoing thing. Like I said, it's been years and years. You and your friends have been working on this project. And what you've really found yourself doing is some of these cabins that have come here recently, you've had to lift them up to get them out of the problems of maybe possible flooding, because we're right on river level here. Right. And all of the issues that come along with maintaining these things as you try to lift them up and bring them back to life.
Right, and see, the village was actually here. It was built in 1968 to 72, and it was used as part of the Quinsippy Island entertainment complex. And then it went bankrupt, and so the Park District got rid of a lot of the stuff, but the one thing they didn't get rid of was the village, because a lot of these cabins were donated by families to the village. And what we're trying to do is save these structures, because they all date back to the 1800s, and they're all original logs. That's what I like about it, is because it's an original log cabin, and this was around when Abe Lincoln was around. So that's why we call it a Lincoln-era log cabin village. In fact, when we have our Frontier Settlement Day in September, the second Saturday in September, we always try to get Abe Lincoln here in some form. One year he came as a rail splitter, and he taught people how
that makes sense.
Used to split rails. One year, several years, he's come now and showed them how he used to write in script. And back in the early days, a few years ago, they weren't teaching that anymore. And he would hold this thing up to a kid and say, "Can you read that?" And they couldn't read it because they weren't learning that. Well, now they're learning it again, which is great.
That is great.
A lot of people in the 1800s, that's all they ever did was write.
You know, we're kind of concentrating on these two cabins because these are the last ones to have been put, up and on new foundations and above flood level.
Right.
Let's talk about Adams General Merchandise a little bit. Is this one finished?
This one's done, yeah. We pretty much got it set up. It was donated in memory of Clad Adams, who was a riverboat captain, and he ran a store in Quincy. And sold things to riverboat people as well as other people. And so the Michaels family donated that cabin in memory of Clad Adams. And so that was the first one we restored, and we had to raise it up because it was sitting down in a bowl.
Yep.
And
as we look at it, we were talking about chinking and daubing, and if you look at what looks like cement between the logs on the outside here, that's the daubing, isn't it?
Right.
So that's what's being done to this cabin, the Fraser cabin over here, and that's what those people have been studying and learning this week.
Right, and the beauty of this is a natural workshop. And as a former instructor and et cetera, I always liked it when I could actually do real world stuff. And so when you do a workshop and you can actually use the materials and work on a facility that's actually doing it, you'll remember it better.
Sure, hands-on. That's why they call it hands-on. While we're here, let's just very briefly, let's take a look at some of the other buildings that are down here. And they've been down here a long time. There's a chapel up at the far end of the valley, right?
Right, that's the Lord's cabin. It was built by the Knights of Columbus. And it's actually rebuilt out of barn logs. And it replicates the first church that Quincy had.
And then you've got a crib, some kind of a crib over here.
Right, and that's the oldest structure that usually hasn't survived. It's actually 1850s. It's not actually older as far as time, but a lot of corn cribs never made it.
Yeah.
A lot of them are bulldozed. This one is an actual corn crib, and the corn wagon has wheels on it that were originally made by a company that's now called Titan Wheel. And back then it was called Electric Wheel. And we had an Eagle Scout restore that cabin, and he found out those wheels came from electric wheel.
Was that in Quincy?
In Quincy.
No kidding. That's a hoot. And what about this one over here?
That was the Hurlman cabin. That was on a farm in the Hurlman had it on their farm, and the Luberts bought the farm and said, we're going to donate that to the Log Cabin Village. And so it's was moved here, and they actually came back and helped restore it.
That's wonderful.
In fact, they did a lot of the chinking on the inside of that, and they helped undoing the roofs. So the ones that got the cedar shake roofs are the ones that we've completed.
Yeah, they're good for a while. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a stone building in the distance
Right.
too.
And that was one of our original board members, Bob Mays, and his mother donated that and actually had it moved here stone by stone and then rebuilt as a stone smokehouse.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And,
okay, so now this week we're working on the Fraser cabin from
Right.
did you say
1838.
1838?
Yeah.
This may predate everything else here.
Yeah, this is the oldest cabin. I think, let me double check it. 1828, I'm sorry.
1828.
That one over there.
Really old.
The other one is 1838. This one is 1828.
Okay, now you brought in an expert on this. He's been here before. He's helped you reconstruct these things. He's
Right.
given you advice. He's from Idaho. His name is Joe
Gallagher.
I think. Okay, he's mixing up some material right now to give to the folks who are taking the class, and they're busy chinking and daubing. So we're going to look at that process next.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, Joe, you conducted a class this week, or conducting a class this week.
That's right.
From some folks who are very interested in log cabin construction, but don't know much about like the finish work, which is it called chinking? Is that what it's called?
Well, we're daubing, actually.
Oh, we're daubing.
Yeah,
What's the difference between chinking and
If
daubing?
I stuffed you in a crack, that would be chinking. If I homogenized you, that would be daubing.
So this is homogenized.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
so,
daubing.
So if you chink it, it means you're putting a solid object like a piece of wood or something into a hole
Right,
or a
right.
crack.
Right, and we're using expanded metal lath for our chinking, so that we have something to daub
Okay.
against.
And that would be something they wouldn't have had back in the 1800s, though, right? They wouldn't
No.
have had expanded metal.
No, but this cabin is not in its original place, so we don't have to meet Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay.
So we're looking at a small company, a country here, a small society here that doesn't have a lot of funds. So we're giving them something that's going to last a long time.
Yeah, so it's not actually, you're not being a stickler on using exactly the same materials.
No.
But you're using as much of the same logs as possible, and you're rebuilding it, and then what you're doing is you're making it last. So if you can put metal or something that's going to last forever in there, that's better than putting a piece of wood or refuse or whatever you might find anywhere, huh?
I don't know what these cabins had originally. Nobody does. So what we'll do is give them something that will last a long time, be relatively weatherproof, be relatively vermin-proof, and they won't have to have somebody like me come in from Idaho to show them how to do this again.
Okay.
It's a one and done kind of thing.
Now what you're using here is your daubing material. What is this daubing material?
This is sand, lime, cement, and gypsum. And I add the gypsum because when it dries, it expands. The cement and the lime will contract when it expands. And this offsets the tendency to shrink, the tendency to crack. So the gypsum expands. That's what you have on plaster walls.
Would the pioneers have had anything like this, any material like this? Or what would they have used?
They would have used sand, and then whatever is out there in the field. I think there's sand here. We're in Mississippi, right?
Yep.
There's sand here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they would have used that, and probably lime. They might have had some cement, but they also had a lot of labor. So they could do this repeatedly.
Right,
Year
every
after
year if they
year.
had to, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to do that. You're not going to ask them to do that. Once you daub this thing and chink it, it's gone. It's done for decades.
Yeah, it's done and gone.
Okay, keep mixing. I don't want to keep you from mixing there.
Okay.
So this consistency, you're going to add some more water, I guess, because it looks like it's going to be kind of dry. It's probably my fault for talking to you.
Let me grab this jug of water here. And I mix it to cookie dough consistency.
Okay.
And that will give us a mix that's adequate for what's inside.
Okay. Well, we're going to get a chance to talk to some of these folks that are taking your class all week. They're the ones that are actually doing the work, right? So you're going to turn this over to them.
Oh,
they're going to put
did
it
you
on a
think this
board.
might not be work? Here, have a.
I believe it. I'm not used to that, so don't hand it.
Yeah.
But so you're going to put it on a flat board for them, and they're going to take it in. And you taught them this week how they're
That's
going
a
to spread
hawk.
it. That's what's not a flat board.
No, it's a hawk.
Okay.
H-A-W-K, like a hawk, like a bird.
And why do you suppose they call it that? Because it's
Because
like a hawk.
who knows?
Like when a hawk opens its wings, that's what it looks like. Who knows? Okay.
You know, I don't have an answer to some of those things, but we had an interesting conversation this morning about what's the difference between a hawk and a hod.
Okay.
And a hod has shoulders on it or walls, and you carry stone or brick in it.
The hod carrier, which
hod
carry
carrier.
the concrete up.
These guys are using hawks.
They're hawk carriers, not hod carriers.
Yeah.
Is that because that's more like what they would have used in the 1850s, or it doesn't matter? Just something to haul it around?
Well, I mean, you stick mortar on whatever,
Yeah.
but the right word is hawk.
Okay. All right. Well, did you have any difficulties in your classes this year? Did they seem to catch on pretty quick? They seem to. Are they good students?
They're great students. And what we did is the first day we went around and we looked on the inside. You could see light showing through in different places. So we took the people around on the outside and started patching some of those holes. I mean, over a period of time, logs wiggle around and you get some holes. So you wait till he's done with the saw, yeah.
Electricity.
That's a battery-powered saw, actually. So we filled the holes, and then we came on the inside, and we added the expanded metal lath, and now we're using the daubing to cover over those. And so,
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to take you away from your work here. We're going to talk to some of these folks. So
yeah,
we'll find out what
please
they're
do.
doing. Yep. You're just about ready to hand them another hawk there, right?
They're gonna get their own hawk full.
Paula Cross, one opportunity this class gives you is a lot of time to be on your knees, your hands and knees,
Absolutely.
right? My goodness. What are you doing down there?
Okay, we've gone through and we've pretty much chinked a lot of the area. That's that wire mesh in there.
Okay,
And
Joe
it-
was telling us about this metal that you would stuff into cracks. Okay,
Yes,
and that's it.
and
All right.
that provides a base to hold the daub.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going back in, we're doing the first coat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the skim coat to kind of, cover it up. And then when it dries, and then they can go back in and do a nice finish coat on it, and it looks much nicer. So,
And that's when you see what looks like a concrete layer.
Yes,
That's that nice finish coat.
Right,
But right now
yes.
this is kind of grainy and dry. Isn't
yeah, and you just kind of push it in. And the one thing I've learned real fast is that you think you have a great technique, and then you get 3 inches down the log, and your technique just falls apart. And you've got to just figure out a different strategy to, figure out how to do it, because the logs are so uneven, of course, since they're not, from a sawmill, and so you have to do it.
And you're fighting gravity all the time, aren't
Oh,
you?
absolutely. And sometimes, the cracks are so small, you got to just get in there with your hand and just kind of push it back in.
Sure.
But you just really need to get that first base coat in there to provide, a flat surface and everything, so they can go in and do the finish coat on.
Let me
Looks
ask you,
much better
Paula,
that way.
What made you want to come here to Quincy from Decatur to learn to do this?
Well, in Decatur, we have the Lincoln Log Courthouse at the Macon County History Museum.
Yep.
And then we also have a log home in the Prairie Village at the museum. Both of them are going to need some attention, some caulking or some chinking and daubing. And, there's not a lot of people that know how to do that. So I saw on the Looking for Lincoln website, they advertised that they were holding this workshop. And I talked to my husband and it said, wouldn't it be fun?
Has it been fun?
It has been a blast. It has been so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, to just learn a new craft that, you just...
So you're going to take what you learned home to
And-
Macon County.
to Macon County.
And you'll be able to show people there how to do it there at the village.
Yeah, absolutely,
Neat.
yes, because ours doesn't need kind of a complete restoration like this, but it needs a lot of spot
Yeah.
chinking and daubing and
Yeah.
everything, and we can handle that.
Well,
we
and
get
it's something you can
volunteers.
do. Yeah, and it's something you can do if you have to. You can do it annually. I mean, if you
Oh,
can teach
yeah.
enough people to do it, you
That's
can
the-
go out there and pick spots that need it, and just kind of do a little refurbishing instead of a whole big deal like this.
Absolutely, I mean, just the maintenance so that you don't kind of have large areas all at once, but if you just keep an eye, if you know how to do it, just keep an eye on it and do it as needed. So that's kind of what we were wanting to do, was just kind of learn how to do it, from an expert.
Right.
So that we kind of knew what we were doing, and we learned the recipe for the daub, and how to mix it, how to apply it, the steps that you need to go through, that you can't just take a bunch of daub and just stick it in there because it won't dry evenly and it'll crack. So we've learned a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's terrific.
and been having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Great group of people here.
I don't want to take you away from your work. Besides, this is going to dry out on you if you don't use it, right?
Absolutely,
So we're
yes.
just going to watch you just for a little bit more
Oh,
here and
okay.
see how you do.
Like I said, sometimes it just goes on perfectly, and then sometimes you just mess completely.
It's
but
just life, isn't it, Paul?
It
It's
is.
just life.
But you just kind of want to get it in there. And just get that wire covered a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, when you've got this nice skim coat on there, then you can go back in and do the
finish, huh?
finish.
Absolutely. Thanks for talking
Yeah.
with us.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been a lot of fun.
John Arnold, we were just talking to your wife about what she was doing over there. She was applying a coat of the original, the starter coat to
Yeah.
the metal, and you're doing the finishing
I'm
coat,
filling
huh?
it in with concrete, so
Okay.
it takes a lot more daub, and then hopefully you finish with a nice smooth surface like that.
Does that take some technique to learn?
Yeah, because the biggest problem is just keeping the concrete in there and not falling on the floor. So you
You got a lot of sweeping up to do, don't you?
You have the concrete a little wetter, and
Yeah.
you just go in and do it a little bit at a time. So
You can imagine. I mean, this is kind of fun for you and your wife, but this would have been like after you worked all this to cut the logs and hew the logs and to get them set up here, and then this would be the finishing touches. You'd be exhausted by the time.
oh
you had to
yeah,
do this,
well, it would be labor intensive for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So are you interested in, like over in Decatur, do you do some historical work?
Yeah, I
over
do some work with my wife over at the History Museum every now and then, and just a little bit of everything. Like learning new things.
there? Well, has it been, like, has this been more difficult than you thought before you went to these classes?
Oh, definitely, definitely. A lot of it is just knowing, how to mix the daub, how wet you need it, how dry you need it, trying to get a nice smooth surface on there. So it's more of a feel than anything you learn.
Do they come by and check your work and make sure it's okay? I mean,
Well, Joe hasn't done anything yet, so I guess it's okay.
he's probably gonna, at the end of the day, he's gonna look around, take a look, and see if you need to come back and do a little
Come
better
back,
job.
do it again.
Well, listen,
But as he says, you're competing against people who used all kinds of different daubs, put anything at all in there, so you're not competing against the, real artisans who did it later in time. So.
well, hopefully, I know this is what you're hoping and what he's hoping and John's hoping, that what you're doing today is going to last a good long time.
Oh, yeah,
Because you don't
yeah.
want to have to do this all the time.
Yeah, you don't want to have to do it every year.
Yeah.
And of course, if you get it more or less weather tight, you're in pretty good shape.
Well, I don't want to keep you from your work.
Okay.
Well, Dan, you're putting the finishing touches on, but you've got a history with this building, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Like
Yeah.
like a couple of years.
Yep, I was on the board when we decided to put it together, so
Yeah.
I've been here since we built it and chinked the outside, and now we're here doing
Now,
the inside.
okay, so now we're doing what we call the daubing, right?
Right.
Which is to fill in the cracks, which is kind of the finishing touch. What was the most challenging part of this building, though? Because you all had I mean, this was the oldest one. This is an 1828 building. There was a lot to do here. What was the most difficult challenge?
Well, was reassembling, because there were some logs that were destroyed, and so we had to find some replacements. And it's important to us that we find historically significant logs, so we tried to find those that were...
You don't want to put in 1900 era logs in an 1828
Exactly,
cabin. Okay.
exactly. So that was quite a challenge, and I act like it's a challenge to me, but it was a challenge to John, because he did most of the searching.
Searching, yeah.
Yeah. And then the guys having to put together a cabin that was taken apart a certain way, but then having to put new logs in, that always presents a challenge as well.
And try to make those look like they blend in, because in the old cabin, you know, you take apart, you number them, you put them back, and you want it to look uniform, right? You want it to look,
Exactly.
and that is, and as you can look, I mean, when you look behind you here, except for these 2x4s up here, these logs look the same.
They all do, yes. And there's the reason for some of the 2x4s and some of the filling was that some of the newer logs did not quite fit like the old ones, so they had a little wider gap.
You got to
that we
fill
had
those gaps with something.
Right.
And we're talking about filling gaps. Now you're holding one of, let's see, called it a hawk. You're holding what Joe
Exactly,
called a
yes.
hawk, and you got it loaded up. Is this the finishing material now?
It is. This is a little runnier than the initial stuff, and so we will finish it up and try to.
Would you
get
go and apply a little of that for us? We want to see what you learned in this class.
Well, I learned that this is a great tool, the duckbill tool, because it's nice and thin, and so when you're
Oh yeah, I think all of you guys need one of those.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
That works.
I think this is Joe's personal one. He hasn't taken it back yet.
Does he know you're using it?
He does, because he saw the mess I was making earlier, and he suggested
Oh, he suggested
I use
use it. Stop wasting. Yes,
Yeah.
he is. Yeah. He saw what a mess you were making and how much you were wasting. So
Exactly. Yeah. He felt sorry for me.
I think you attended class, because it looks like you're doing pretty good smearing that in there. Well, you can have fun and do good at the same time.
Yeah, it's fun. It is work, but it's fun, and got a good group of people that like to learn stuff and tease each other too.
Well, then the nice thing is they can go back and train some folks to do it where they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, last time we were at this wheelbarrow, we were talking to Joe. He was doing exactly what you're doing now,
Right.
mixing up a batch, huh? And I asked him what's in it, and he told me, but I forgot. So, what do you start with here? I mean, I know you got these bags opened up here.
Right. So what I started with was the sand,
Oh, a big pile
the
of
big
sand.
pile of sand.
You guys
yes.
go through
all
that pretty
clean. Yes,
quick.
it's clean sand, and
Yeah.
it goes through pretty quick. Mm-hmm. So we use 4 parts of sand, 4 shovelfuls, 2 of the concrete,
Okay.
1 of the lime, and then 1 of the gypsum.
And that's the white bag.
That
over
is
there.
correct.
Okay. And then what you end up is this the finishing stuff that we saw?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
For the daubing.
For the daubing. Okay.
Yes.
And that's the sort of smooth, liquidy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The smoother. Okay.
Yeah. We put it at a base, kind of like pancake batter, somewhere maybe a little bit drier than that, and that helps it to stick to your surface.
Okay. Now, do you know how much water to add to this, or do you just add as you need to?
We just add as we need to, and what we've done here is dry mixed everything together. It helps it so it doesn't all clump together as you're mixing. So, and then we won't mix it all at once.
Right.
It'll dry up too fast.
Because you want it to be usable.
Correct.
If you put a big hunk of it together, it would just dry
Dry
out.
before we get a chance to use
It'd
it.
be dried concrete. By the time you use it.
Right, right.
Well, let me ask you a question, because it's interesting that you're here, because you work for the Missouri Parks Department.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So you've been here before to learn about log
Yes,
cabins and how
yes.
to reconstruct them. Tell us the story about what you're doing over there.
Well, I work for the First Missouri State Capitol State Historic Site, and we have a log structure
Is that
on
in
our
St.
property.
Charles?
It is in St. Charles.
okay.
Yes, it is. And so that's why I came to these classes, to get more knowledge of how to not only maintain, but to do major repairs. And that's the knowledge I'm gaining from Joe. As you said, I was here in 2018, I believe it was. Joe came to our site in 2019 and gave a same class. Well, not the same class, but a similar class. His was more of an evaluation class. And now the chinking and daubing's going on, and since I have some repairs, I'm gonna have to chink and daub, so here's how I get to learn how to do it.
You know, you got a pretty neat job, don't you?
Yes, I enjoy my job. I really do. I really do.
Well, sure. I mean, because when you're not there, you're here
Right.
learning how to go
Right.
back and perform these
Absolutely.
operations that you
Absolutely.
need to do. But it's interesting. You have that one historic log building at the old state capitol, or are there more than that?
Well, I mean, the main historical building is what served as the first state capitol to begin with, from 1821 to 1826. So I maintain that building, the grounds, plus the log structure was donated to us, I believe, in the early 70s from a family out of Hillsboro, Missouri. So that's welcomed on our site. People from all over come to take pictures of that. They often ask, was that the Capitol? No. If you turn around, there's the Capitol.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So yeah, it's a neat place.
Yeah. Do you mind adding a little water to
Absolutely,
this so we can see the
absolutely.
operation here? I know we don't have a lot more time, but I
Right.
would like to see you get started with it.
See where his clean water is. So we just, ooh, that one's got paint in it. I don't like that
Well,
one.
we don't want that.
No, so
we
I'm
need
gonna
some
get behind
some
you. I've
clean
got-
Mississippi water.
Yeah,
That's
there
what
we
we
go.
need.
So all we're gonna do is, and again, we're not gonna mix up the whole batch, so we'll just pour some water in here, and then we'll come back to the other side again, and we'll just take just a partial amount out of this pile and get it in there,
And away you go.
and away we go.
Yeah, and like Joe said, this doesn't look like hard work, but mixing that in there, that takes some
Right.
muscle, doesn't it?
Yes.
It doesn't want to move.
No, it does not. Once you start getting it,
Yeah.
and you could tell I clearly didn't put enough water, but I didn't want to.
Well, waters we got a lot of.
Right, we have a lot of, so we just continue to add water until we get the consistency that
Okay.
we want, and then everybody can have some fun.
Well, Steve, thanks for visiting with us. And good
Absolutely.
luck when you go back to Missouri, the first state capital, that you get done what you need to
Right,
do.
thank you so much.
All right. As you can see, taking care of these log cabins down here on Quinsippy Island is an ongoing thing, and they do it by major events that they have in May at the beginning of the summer and again in September. With another Illinois story in Quincy, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.